The Prince of Darkness has fallen. Ozzy Osbourne, the voice that ignited a musical revolution and defined an era of heavy metal, is gone at 76. But his final hours remain shrouded in mystery. Was it simply the end of a long, legendary road, or is there more to the story than we've been told? As fans mourn the loss of a true icon, unsettling questions begin to surface. What really happened behind closed doors? Why are longtime insiders whispering about a cover-up? Today, we pull back the curtain on the untold truth of Ozzy Osbourne's final moments, the truth the headlines refuse to print. Stay with us, because the most heartbreaking truths are still to come. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just a rock star, he was a force of nature. A living legend. A raw, unfiltered voice for an entire generation that found strength in rebellion, pain in darkness, and truth in chaos. As the frontman of Black Sabbath, he redefined music, performance, and fame. But now, after decades of shaking the world with his electrifying presence, Ozzy has passed away at 76. The world isn't just mourning an artist, it's grieving the loss of an icon whose fire burned brighter, and longer, than anyone thought possible. In this video, we're going beyond the headlines and peeling back the curtain on Ozzy's final chapter. We'll uncover the emotional weight of his last days, the painful health battles he fought behind closed doors, and the private family moments that speak volumes. You'll hear from those closest to him, revisit the haunting controversies that never truly left his side, and witness the rarely told story of his final words, final hours, and the legacy he left behind. This is the raw, emotional farewell to a man who changed music, and lived life, on his own terms. You won't believe the tributes flooding in from every corner of the world, and even more chilling are the eerie signs that fans now say foreshadowed Ozzy Osbourne's death. Was the Prince of Darkness truly at peace in his final days? Or was something deeper, more haunting unfolding behind the scenes? This is where the story shifts. This is where it gets raw, real, and deeply personal. Stay with us, because what you're about to uncover may forever change the way you remember the man who redefined rock and rebellion. Ozzy Osbourne's final chapter was as heartbreaking as it was human. To the outside world, he was still the wild, untamed legend, the man who once bit the head off a bat and turned chaos into performance art. But behind closed doors, those closest to him witnessed a quieter, more fragile Ozzy. The fierce stage presence was giving way to slow decline, silent suffering, and a heartbreaking acceptance of the inevitable. This wasn't just the end of a career, it was the fading of a fire that had burned defiantly for decades. And now, the world is left to mourn not only a music icon but the vulnerable man behind the myth. It all began years ago with a string of devastating health scares that slowly pulled Ozzy Osbourne away from the stage he once ruled. Fans were heartbroken when he cancelled major tours, including his much-anticipated No More Tours 2, but what the public didn't fully grasp at the time was the deeper truth behind the cancellations. Ozzy had been silently battling Parkinson's disease since 2003, a secret he kept for nearly 2 decades before finally revealing it in 2020. He called it a waking nightmare, and fans could see it in his face, in his walk, in the fire that once burned so fiercely now dimming with every passing year. In the months leading up to his death, that nightmare only worsened. Ozzy was repeatedly hospitalized, enduring a brutal spinal condition that stemmed from a terrifying fall in 2019. That single moment triggered a cascade of health issues, nerve damage, chronic pain, and a loss of mobility so severe he could barely walk. The man who once leapt across stages, screaming into microphones with wild energy, now found himself in a quiet, agonizing battle with his own body. And through it all, he carried the weight of his legacy, trying to stay strong, even as his body betrayed him. His wife and fierce protector, Sharon Osbourne, called these last several months the most difficult period of their marriage. She claimed that at times, Ozzy's heavy medication made it difficult for her to identify the man she had been in love with since 1982. She nevertheless remained at his side, sleeping in hospital rooms, fighting for his treatment, and protecting him from the unrelenting scrutiny of the press. Most people are unaware that during those final weeks, Ozzy insisted on spending all of her time with her family. It has been stated that producers, friends, and even some former band members were turned away. It was a really personal farewell. It was reported that his kids, Jack, Kelly, and Amy, stayed at his bedside for extended periods of time, playing music, reminiscing, and holding his hand during the most trying times. According to one insider, during his last days, Ozzy even asked that Black Sabbath's timeless ballad, Changes, a melancholic and poignant song about letting go, suffering, and human growth, be played quietly and often. This is where it becomes even more sentimental, though. Ozzy reportedly told Sharon, "I'm not afraid anymore," just a few days before he went away. It was a simple line, but it conveyed everything to a guy who battled the demons of celebrity, addiction, and disease. Some fans aren't sure we've heard everything, though. But what took place during the last 24 hours? Why are people still asking questions about what actually happened behind closed doors on the internet? The news broke early in the morning. The Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, was 76 years old when he died. The family's formal statement was succinct, straightforward, and emotional. Ozzy passed away quietly, surrounded by loved ones. He fought valiantly to the very end. As we mourn the passing of our cherished husband, father, and legend, we kindly request privacy. Headlines spread like wildfire in a matter of minutes. The story was covered by all of the major media, including The Guardian, BBC TMZ, and Rolling Stone. Social media took off. On Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, the hashtag #RipOz immediately soared to the top of trending rankings. Millions of followers posted recollections, tributes, and emotional responses in less than an hour. But the atmosphere was somewhat unnerving in the midst of the public mourning. Fans weren't merely in sadness, they were also recording a final song or were astonished by the stage. Just 2 months earlier, he had stated in a recent interview, "If I can sit, if I can sing, I'll give it one last go." Fans thought that although Ozzy was deteriorating, he wasn't this close to passing away because of that hopeful light. And that's when things began to seem strange. Fans noted that Sharon Osbourne had been remarkably silent on social media for weeks at a time. Others observed that days prior to the revelation, Ozzy's kids, especially Jack and Kelly, had completely stopped posting on the internet and cancelled events. Behind the scenes, what were they getting ready for? Then the odd obituary detail appeared. Instead of dying in a hospital, Ozzy died away quietly at home. However, according to insiders, he had just come home from a lengthy stay at a private medical facility and had been under constant medical supervision for months. So why the abrupt change? Why bring him home so quickly? Some others think Ozzy realized his time was running out and decided he wanted to pass away in the home he built with Sharon, surrounded by the people he loved, listening to music, and not under fluorescent lights. Others conjecture was more intricate, requiring medical decisions that the general public would never completely comprehend. But whatever the situation, one thing was evident right away. More than a rock star was gone from the world. One of its symbols was gone. Fans set up spontaneous candlelight vigils in locations all around the world, from Los Angeles to London. Flowers and handwritten comments were piling up outside his childhood home in Aston, Birmingham, by the hour. "You taught us to scream, to rebel, and to live free," one fan commented. "You can rest now, but your voice will always be heard." Even old competitors like Gene Simmons paid heartfelt homage, as did metal legends James Hetfield and Corey Taylor. However, his longtime bandmate Tony Iommi's statement, "We began this journey together as kids, and now I'm left without my brother," was arguably the most poignant. "For the rest of my life, I will always remember your voice." As tributes poured in, however, tales of Ozzy's last desires, secret notes, and even unreleased songs started to circulate, so fans weren't done asking questions. Behind closed doors, the world was grieving for Ozzy Osbourne, but a completely other storm was building that not even his most ardent supporters could have predicted. Ozzy's final will and testament came into quiet focus shortly after his death was announced. Then things started to go apart. Ozzy changed his will a little more than a year ago, according to family insiders. Even his inner circle was taken aback by the decision. Why would a man suddenly alter his estate so drastically while he was so ill? This is when things become more tricky. According to reports, Ozzy's fortune, which is thought to be worth over $220 million, may not be distributed as everyone had anticipated. The alleged lower shares for some family members are causing rumors of tension, especially with regard to Ozzy's eldest daughter Amy Osbourne, who famously refused to appear on the reality show The Osbournes and chose to live outside the family spotlight. However, Sharon, his wife of over 40 years, is still expected to receive a sizable portion. According to sources, Amy may have been completely left out of some aspects of the inheritance, possibly because of a long-standing rift between her and Ozzy in their later years, rather than out of animosity. Some claim that this exclusion was pragmatic rather than personal. According to one insider, Ozzy was constantly attempting to preserve Amy's privacy. Furthermore, he didn't want to include her in the tumultuous estate disputes. However, it didn't end there. A collection of handwritten letters that an Ozzy left behind are currently the subject of much discussion. According to reports, he wrote personal farewell cards for Sharon and each of his children. These weren't official records. According to reports, they were heartfelt comments that only his family would ever see and were full with memories, regrets, and messages. Or are they going to? Someone close to the family is thinking of making Ozzy's last remarks public, perhaps in a future documentary or memoir, according to one leaked comment. However, some argue that would directly contradict Ozzy's last desire for seclusion. The twist is here. Unreleased songs that Australians recorded over the last 2 years while battling disease and kept safe in a secure vault are also discussed. In an interview, Sharon once alluded to the fact that Ozzy had taped content for a future in which he would not be present. Will this music become a struggle for rights, or is it part of his legacy? It has come to light that several distant relatives, including former colleagues and estranged cousins, are already preparing legal challenges against the estate on the grounds that they were promised payment for their previous work with Ozzy. It's unclear if those allegations will stand up in court, but it's obvious that while Ozzy's passing may have relieved his suffering, it also unleashed a torrent of unresolved family strife. However, Sharon has mostly kept quiet and just issued a brief comment in the midst of all the rumors. "My life's love was an Ozzy. Right now, my main concern is treating him with the respect, peace, and honesty that he deserves. Will that peace endure, though, is the true question." Ozzy Osbourne was more than simply Black Sabbath's lead singer. He was a walking paradox, a force of nature, a cultural revolution, and someone who touched people's hearts one minute and shocked the world the next. Ozzy's journey from being born into a working-class household in Aston, Birmingham, to becoming the godfather of heavy metal was anything from typical. It was unrefined, erratic, and frequently incredibly sinister. But he stayed true to himself throughout it all, which is what made him renowned. Let's face it, Ozzy wasn't perfect. He publicly fought mental health issues, battled addiction, and made headlines for his strange and occasionally unsettling actions. He bit the head off a live bat on stage in 1982, which is the notorious bat incident. It was more than a publicity gimmick. It did happen. Fans accepted that because that's who Ozzy was, even while critics criticized him for it. He is wild, unrepentant, and uncopyable, but his profound emotional understanding is frequently disregarded. A man with a very lyrical spirit lay behind the mayhem. His songs, which were frequently written off as sinister or demonic, were actually tales of suffering, conflict, love, alienation, and the pursuit of truth in a shattered world. Generations of outsiders were impacted by songs like Mama, I'm Coming Home, Diary of a Mad Man, and War Pigs. People who felt misunderstood, unwelcome, and unheard. Ozzy's comeback story was even more astounding. In 1979, he was dismissed from Black Sabbath, and many people thought his career was gone. However, rather than going into obscurity, Ozzy made a comeback with Blizzard of Ozz, an album that not only brought his career back to life but also revolutionized the metal genre. He demonstrated that the inner darkness might be transformed into strength and beauty with songs like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. In the US, that album alone sold more than 5 million copies. The mythology only became bigger from there. Ozzy remains current despite decades of changing musical trends. He made the wave rather than merely riding it. Even with the popular reality show The Osbournes in the 2000s, Ozzy underwent still another change. Millions fell in love with him again, this time as a charming, clumsy, profane father. Not to be overlooked are his partnerships. Ozzy crossed generations and genres, from Tony Iommi to Elton John, Zakk Wylde to Post Malone. You respected Ozzy if you were a music lover, regardless of age. The music, however, might not be his greatest contribution. It's the human element he added to the rock star narrative. He was open about his flaws. He owned his errors. He fought to live smooth and sober. He relapsed. He tried once more. He talked overtly about Parkinson's disorder, approximately melancholy, about the fear of dropping manage. He showed us that even legends bleed, and that honesty gave thousands and thousands the power to stand their personal demons. There's a motive why fanatics across the globe are lighting candles, holding tribute live shows, and writing messages like, "You saved my lifestyles." Ozzy wasn't ideal, however he turned into actual. And in an international full of filtered illusions, realness is rare. Even in loss of life, his presence is everywhere. Radio stations have switched to all-day Ozzy marathons. Murals are doping up from London to La, and music streaming platforms have mentioned record-breaking performs of his catalog because the news broke. But there may be nevertheless one extra piece to this story. Due to the fact at the same time as the arena celebrates the legacy, there's a part of Ozzy's existence it's regularly left unspoken. His deep fear of demise and the religious questions that haunted him till the cease. Regardless of his larger-than-life lifestyle's personality, the leather-based jackets, the howling vocals, the Satan horns, and chaos, Ozzy Osbourne was a person deeply haunted by means of one issue, loss of life. And now not inside the manner you may count on. At some point of his existence, Ozzy regularly pointed out demise as an ever-present shadow, something he couldn't escape, no matter how rich or well-known he became. Even at the peak of his reputation, he often pointed out night-time terrors, panic assaults, and an overwhelming fear that he wouldn't wake up the following morning. In an extraordinary 20 because I suppose I will go to hell, I've lived through worse, but because I don't know what's ready. That unknown, it is like a ghost that by no means leaves. That fear fashioned so much of who he turned into. It became the motive at the back of his reckless adolescence. The regular push to stay speedy, to numb ache, to escape the silence. However, as he elderly and sobered up, that fear advanced. It failed to leave. It deepened. Ozzy turned to spirituality in his later years, but not within the conventional sense. He frequently joked that he failed to trust prepared faith, but he believed in something larger. He examined the Bible. He contemplated, and according to Sharon, he would regularly sit on my own, quietly staring out into the space for hours, especially after his Parkinson's analysis. Some say Ozzy believed he was being punished for things he'd completed. Now not simply the wild antics or the substance abuse, but the private regrets, human beings he hurt, friends he misplaced, and the time he could never get returned with his youngsters for the duration of the darkest elements of his dependency. One of the most heart-wrenching tales comes from his daughter, Kelly Osbourne, who as soon as stated in an interview, "There have been times I used to be afraid I'd lose him earlier than I ever got to virtually realize him. Now that I have, I am now not prepared to say goodbye." In his very last year, Ozzy reportedly met with several non-secular advisors, no longer pastors or priests, however electricity healers, mediums, and personal chaplain. Those near him say he wasn't searching out forgiveness. He became looking for peace. He desired to make peace together with his legacy, along with his ache, and maximum of all, with himself. And unusually, in the one's very last months, something shifted. Jack Osbourne told a close buddy that his father became eerily calm. He wasn't afraid anymore. He stopped speaking me about what he would pass over. He started specializing in what he had given the world, his tune, his family, and his reality. And that truth, it changed into dark, it became messy, it became human, however it became actual. And fanatics linked with that more deeply than something. In considered one of his remaining interviews, while asked how he wanted to be remembered, Ozzy truly said, as a person who failed to forward, someone who gave you everything he had, even when he had nothing left. And perhaps this is the real legacy of Ozzy Osbourne. He didn't die with diamonds in his hands. He died surrounded by a love, worn out, worn, broken, and subsequently at peace. He became the Prince of Darkness, yes, but in the end, he was a person searching for mild. And possibly he subsequently determined it. So right here we are. Ozzy Osbourne, the person who terrified dad and mom, stimulated generations, broke the policies, and built an empire from chaos, is now not with us. And yet, his presence feels more potent than ever. We've watched his upward thrust from the grey streets of Birmingham to the thundering tiers of world arenas. We've seen the uncooked pain of his fitness battles, the turmoil of addiction, the family drama, and the non-secular questions that in no way left his aspect. He gave us many years of unforgettable tune, mind-bending controversy, and heart-wrenching honesty. He never claimed to be best, and that's precisely why the world loved him. Ozzy's loss of life may have ended a chapter in tune history, however it's far from the cease of his story. His voice will maintain to echo in stadiums, through headphones, on vinyl, and across streaming structures. His story might be surpassed down now not just as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to resilience, to being unapologetically yourself, regardless of the value. And in a global wherein so many try to conform, Ozzy turned into a reminder to rebel. He lived as a fighter. He died as a legend. And he's going to be remembered as a father, husband, survivor, and the unapologetic prince of a genre he helped create. But now we want to pay attention from you. The fans, the network, the ones who kept Ozzy going most of these years. What's your maximum powerful memory of Ozzy Osbourne? Did his tune form your existence? What track hits unique now that he is long past? Percentage your story inside the remarks underneath. Allow us build a virtual shrine for the person who gave us so much in chaos, in brilliance, and in reality. And if this tribute touched your coronary heart, please hit like, subscribe, and activate that notification bell so you in no way leave out a second from this channel. We convey you the actual testimonies, raw, unfiltered, and respectful due to the fact legends like Ozzy deserve not anything less. Share this video with all people who ever cranked up crazy teach and felt invincible. Share it with a person who's nevertheless struggling, who wishes to recognize that even the wildest spirits can discover peace. Due to the fact in the end, Ozzy Osbourne showed us that the darkness isn't always something to worry. It is something to fight through. And maybe, simply perhaps, there is a touch Ozzy in all of